Imagine waking to a life turned upside down, where the familiar becomes a maze of deceit and the closest of confidants harbor dark secrets. Follow the unraveling of a tale that begins with a whisper and ends with a roar, revealing the intricate dance of betrayal and survival. My Lexus began making unusual sounds one morning, so I took it to Auto Haven, where Carl has been taking care of my vehicles for the past decade. Carl called me around midday, but rather than reassuring me, he invited me in for a chat. When I arrived, Carl took me into his private office. "Everything is fine with the engine," he said, "only a loose belt." "But there's more," he replied, with serious eyes on me. "Someone tampered with the brake line. There was only enough fluid for regular stops. If you had to brake suddenly or travel downward, you could have crashed." I just looked astonished. Linda, my wife, and I had recently moved into a beautiful luxury house with cathedral ceilings and plenty of glass, situated in peaceful woods at the end of a cul-de-sac off a steep main road. If I had driven that automobile home that night, I may have died. After a little pause, I spoke out. "Carl, do me a favor, don't tell anyone about it yet." "Have you repaired it?" "No, Alex, this is a serious subject. Maybe it's a crime." "I need to call the cops," Carl replied strongly. "Okay," I said, while thinking, what about this? Take pictures of the brake line and file a report with the police. However, do not call them right away. Leave the automobile in your backlot, and I'll rent one of your older vehicles for a few days. "Are there any surveillance cameras there?" "Yeah," Carl nodded, still uncertain. "Here's the deal, whoever did this will most likely try to hide their traces once they learn I'm alive. So my prediction is that they'll try to steal that car from the lot in the coming evenings. I'd rather not involve the cops until after that happens. We'll have security footage to show them when we do." After 45 minutes, I parked the rental blue Corolla in my driveway and took the rest of the day off to think things through. Money appeared to be the motivation for the attempt on my life, as president and co-founder of TechPeak, a Silicon Valley software company valued at $6.8 billion. I believed someone wanted me removed from the picture, potentially as part of an attack on the corporation. It was Candace's day off. She was our cook and housekeeper who generally worked from noon to 8 p.m., and the house was silent. Gina must have been shopping or playing tennis. I raced through my thoughts, considering potential suspects and motives for the previous events. I called Jeffrey, a buddy who owns the security company TechPeak employs. Without saying much, I informed him of a potential problem, either ongoing financial irregularities or a future threat to the company. We arranged for his team to perform a thorough review of our systems and financial records. In private, I offered Jeffrey a temporary password to view critical data on my office desktop, emphasizing the importance of confidentiality under the pretense of a routine audit. Next, I contacted Meredith, my longtime secretary, and asked her to enter the temporary password into my computer for Jeffrey's team, who would arrive later in the day. With things settled, I resumed my aimless roaming. I sat down at our home computer and began looking around, expecting to discover nothing. Out of curiosity, I tried to access Gina's files, including her email, only to discover that they were all password protected. What might Gina have on our computer that she did not want me to see? Aside from anything unusual, like throwing a surprise party, I couldn't think of anything. I reminded myself mentally to ask her about it later. Gina strolled into the kitchen around 4:30 p.m. while I was drinking tea. She almost collapsed when she gazed at me. It was astonishing. Her mouth dropped open, her face grew pale, and she leaned against the door frame. "What exactly are you doing here?" She couldn't speak clearly. I gave a gentle smile. "Honey, I live here, remember?" She pulled herself together and sat across from me at the table, feigning a smile. "Of course, dear. It's just you're rarely home this early, and I didn't notice your automobile outside." I was on the verge of telling her everything about the brake line event, but instead, I said that there was an issue with the engine and that I would have to leave it with Carl for a few days. He offered me one of their old automobiles to drive. That's what is in the driveway. Why had I not told her the truth at the time? I assumed it was because I didn't want to concern her. I didn't want to mention that someone may be attempting to kill me in order to fear their wife. But later, as I thought about it, I wondered if there was another explanation. Why was she so surprised to see me seated in the kitchen, not just surprised, but absolutely astounded, as if it were the last thing she anticipated? I couldn't understand her reaction, and the more I thought about it, the more worried I became. She responded, apparently putting herself together, "So it's good to have you home early. What would you like to do for dinner? Since Candace is off, how about we go out?" I made a great suggestion, and Gina let out an exclamation, "Let me shower first, then perhaps we can go to Andante. She hurriedly exited the room, and a few minutes later, I heard the shower running. I set my teacup in the sink and went to the bedroom, thinking I should wash my face and change into something more casual before we left. The bedroom door was practically shut, and as I went closer, I noticed Gina speaking quietly but urgently on the phone. Why would she start the shower and then make a phone call? I hadn't heard the phone ring, so she must have called herself. I didn't hear much of the chat, only pieces like "no doubt, I honestly have no idea, no, of course not, yes, we'll have to, okay baby, bye." But it was enough to knock me out. She was chatting with Jeffrey, my security expert friend. His nickname was Dord, and I had taunted him with Dowdell since middle school. Gina had picked up my nickname. There was no mistake who she was talking to. I waited for her to finish the call and walk into the restroom, then I waited 2 more minutes before going into the bedroom to change. I washed up in the guest bathroom so as not to disrupt Gina's shower. My mind raced with what was really going on. Could Gina and my friend Jeffrey have had anything to do with what happened to my car? Despite the bizarre occurrences of the last several minutes, it felt implausible. Gina and I had been married 8 years. I was 46, she was 37 years old. I had previously been married in my 20s and had 2 great children who lived far away. Following my divorce, Gina and I first met when she came to TechPeak as a sales representative for a computer support firm with which we worked. I was stunned by her attractiveness and promptly scheduled a lunch date with a colleague at her workplace. Gina was magnificent, standing at almost 5 feet 10 inches with long black hair, dark eyes, high cheekbones, and an athletic frame. She had a confident manner of movement that set her apart. We began dating shortly after meeting and became serious quite quickly, leading to our engagement within a year. I'm 9 years older and not a supermodel, but I've had a successful business career, which I believed appealed to Gina. That sat well with me because I could afford it. She was lively and gregarious, always including me in different things and keeping our personal life interesting. She enjoyed flirting but was always devoted, returning home to me and keeping our lives exciting, from intimate moments to extreme sports. However, recent developments involving Jeffrey Denham, my normal go-to for guidance, have complicated matters. I had him check TechPeak's finances, but now I'm reconsidering using him due to my doubts. Fortunately, I had not told anyone about the altered car. Gina and Jeffrey had no idea what I was up to. That night, I put my acting talents to the test. Gina and I enjoyed a wonderful dinner at Andante while sipping delicious Chianti. Despite my worries, I remained attentive and continued the chat. Gina flirted under the table, and I joined in, keeping things light and loving. I assumed the evening would end in the bedroom, as it usually did when we dined out. I chose to go with it and enjoy the moment, despite my suspicions. I didn't want to make Gina suspect anything. After supper, everything continued as usual. Gina changed into a crimson nightgown, and we had a familiar, delightful night. The next morning, I swiftly planned for a vacation to Los Angeles, booking my ticket, hotel at the Beverly Wilshire, and limo to the airport. Following a brief breakfast, I abruptly woke Gina, informing her that I needed to depart for a last-minute business meeting. This happens all the time in my job. Gina, half asleep, kissed me goodnight and promised to keep the bed warm until I returned on Friday. Throughout the limo ride and flight, I considered Gina's likely role in the recent threats against me. Despite her innocence, questions lingered in Los Angeles. I purchased a disposable phone to maintain confidentiality and scheduled a quiet lunch with Dan Cameron, a former colleague who now runs a thriving firm, to discuss my worries at an outside eatery, avoiding potential eavesdroppers like Jeffrey Denham. Dan and I relaxed over sandwiches and beers, talking about family and work. As the conversation progressed, I turned to a more important problem. When I informed Dan I suspected difficulties at TechPeak and asked if he knew of a reputable security firm, he suggested a Vertex Securities, led by Alan Newman, but questioned why I wasn't employing a Jeffrey Denham. I mentioned that I needed an outsider and asked Dan to contact Newman without mentioning my name. Dan promptly made the call and scheduled an appointment for later that day. I thanked him and requested that our chat be discreet. Then I brought up another topic, whether he had ever observed anything odd about Gina. Dan became uneasy and paused before revealing that Gina had flirted with him a few years ago, just before he relocated to Los Angeles. He described her advances as more than casual, implying that there was more on the table. Dan seemed apprehensive as he emphasized that Gina's flirting was subtle and never explicit, allowing for plausible deniability. He had stayed quiet about it to avoid causing too much trouble and was concerned about my response to something so ambiguous. Dan became nervous as he said that Gina's provocative behavior had only lasted a few weeks before she returned to her normal self, which he suspected was a test. He then revealed a more disturbing story. Dan's wife, Linda, spoke with Barbara Daniels, who suspected her husband, Apex's CFO, Josh Daniels, of cheating, possibly with Gina. Barbara's suspicions were based on Josh's lies about his movements and hints, such as returning home smelling of Gina's perfume. Dan and Linda had debated, telling me they were concerned about generating trouble over unverified allegations. We finished our talk, and while I was not furious with Dan, his stories became more detailed. I was concerned about Gina's probable involvement in significant company difficulties. I had a brief, frank talk with Alan Newman. I said that I required a top-tier security firm for a secret situation that was independent from any relationships in my group. Newman recommended Barry for a move to San Diego, citing his intelligence and the quality of his firm's workforce. He set up a meeting for me with Asimov while keeping my identity hidden. Later, I asked Dan Cameron to use his credit card to rent a car under the name Elliot and pick me up at the airport. This would allow me to travel without being immediately attached to myself. After a quick dinner at the Beverly Wilshire and my nighttime conversation with Gina, I planned for the next day. I dressed casually, wearing sweatpants and a baseball cap. I secretly left the hotel and grabbed a cab to Lax to pick up my rental car. By 9:45, I was parked outside Asimov's office in San Diego. Barry Asimov didn't appear particularly striking at first, with a bad comb-over and an ill-fitting suit. However, within minutes of our meeting, I could tell he was quite intelligent. I was prepared to tell him the truth without holding back. I mentioned to Barry Asimov that I wanted a security firm for a large and very confidential project that required considerable computer knowledge. I highlighted that the job was outside of his regular field and that I was willing to pay well, maybe up to 7 figures. Asimov inquired as to why I chose his firm over Alan Newman, whom I had previously cited as a suggestion. I stated that employing Newman directly would not allow me to keep anonymity, while highlighting the importance of prudence. Following a brief debate, Asimov wanted to know the project's complete scope. I discussed my position at TechPeak, the company's value, and a recent life-threatening incident. Gina and Denham were the people I thought were involved, though I did not divulge all of my sources of information. The move recognized the importance of care given Denham's reputation. He offered a proposal with two primary components. One squad directed by his specialist David Carlos would go over our financial and internal records, while another led by Vera Anderson would monitor Denham, Gina, and other important TechPeak workers. With Carlos, Anderson, and Asimov, we met on a regular basis to plan our approach, and he provided vital insights to ensure their effectiveness. By the middle of the afternoon, I was on my way back to Los Angeles. Asimov agreed to work on a promissory note rather than requesting an upfront payment. Carlos would access my office computer via a website Asimov has supplied. I'd log in to download software that would allow his team to access and copy relevant files, then wipe all signs of my activity. Though not infallible, this method would necessitate a very skeptical expert to identify any wrongdoing. Carlos projected that he would identify and download all required files in 20 hours. Anderson was tasked with conducting discreet surveillance on Gina and other TechPeak executives, with the exception of Denham, who as a security specialist would most certainly discover any monitoring attempts. Instead, her staff would surreptitiously review their phone and credit card information. We determined that installing surveillance equipment in my home and putting bugs in Gina's handbag and cell phone were safer options. Anderson intended to sweep my house to check for existing bugs when it was unoccupied, which I would arrange. They'd also sneak into Gina's locker at her tennis club to plant their gadgets. My duty was to act normally at home and work while remaining vigilant, as a move indicated that my attackers would not likely strike swiftly again, requiring time to cover up their previous attempt. He warned me against taking hazards such as climbing alone or driving alone and urged that Gina drive me whenever possible, though he didn't expect instant threats. I flashed Barry a wry look and told him I'd be cautious before leaving. We devised a one-way communication strategy with throwaway cell phones. I'd call and request Larry's as a transfer, and the receptionist would fix my error and connect me to Barry. We agreed that I would return to the Beverly Wilshire after dinner every other day. I contacted Gina to let her know I was coming home early. She joked about how lonely she was, and I vowed to cheer her up soon after we hung up. The prospect of her perhaps plotting against me seemed strange. Before, I saw Gina as gorgeous and engaging but self-centered. Our relationship was based on shared goals and activities rather than romanticism. Now, the possibility that she was participating in a plan against my life, motivated by money or infidelity with people I knew, such as Josh Daniels and Jeffrey Denham, made me reconsider everything. On my flight back, I prepared to be normal in front of Gina, ready to go along with whatever happened. However, a part of me was bracing for a clash. Reuniting with Gina was intense. She had ordered Chinese food and welcomed me seductively, beginning a romantic evening. Despite the complexity, I liked spending time with her. It's unclear whether it was genuine love or lust on her part. We soon moved to our bedroom, showered, and ate dinner. On Thursday, things appeared normal with Gina. She gave no indication of my suspicions as she chatted about her day, which included tennis and shopping. The next day, Jeffrey Denham informed me that he would be visiting the office, most likely to discuss the audit I had requested and maybe to investigate my motives. When he came, he casually mentioned my trip to Los Angeles, and I wondered how he knew. I avoided asking directly to avoid raising suspicions. In our talk, Jeffrey reported only minor flaws discovered throughout the audit, nothing alarming. He then inquired as to why I had begun it. I explained that a contact had suggested suspicions about a Silicon Valley company being targeted financially, which sounded vague but encouraged me to check our accounts. This appeared to calm Jeffrey down. After Jeffrey left, I instantly got onto the website Barry Asimov had provided. I used the appropriate software and authorized his team to begin accessing TechPeak's funds and communications. I stayed at my workstation to oversee the procedure while eating lunch. Meredith handed me the San Jose Mercury News. A headline from the Metro page caught my eye about a fire at an auto body shop that destroyed 12 cars. The story described a fire at Marshall Motors that destroyed 12 cars and damaged others. No cause had been established. I wasn't surprised, suspecting that someone had targeted my Lexus and burning it cleverly obscured which automobile was the intended target. I contacted Dominic with caution, wary of the potential bugs in my office, as Barry had advised. I inquired about the fire and the condition of my Lexus, which Dominic verified was totaled. We agreed to meet after work so I could view the damage myself after the police had conducted their investigation. Dominic and I walked around the lot, discussing the probable foul play. He mentioned a gas leak coming from an old Ford pickup parked next to my Lexus. The fire may have been started to keep potential bugs away. When I asked Dominic about the surveillance footage, he revealed that he had made copies for me and stored them in his office. I then asked Dominic for another favor, to send the surveillance tapes, his initial car report, and photos to the various moving offices via FedEx on Monday. I made certain he repeated the address to ensure he had it correct. I decided to leave my rental car with Dominic and start taking taxis at random to avoid any traps. On the way to a taxi stand, I instantly called Barry and requested to use the alias Larry. Barry informed me that Carlos had collected significant data from my office computer but required more time to complete the downloads. Vera Anderson's team had scanned my house for bugs, installed some, cracked Gina's computer passwords, and copied her files, but they hadn't yet reviewed them. They planned to take Gina's purse the next time she went to tennis. I informed Barry about the fire at Marshall Motors and the impending delivery of the tapes and report. We intended to reconnect early the following week. The weekend went surprisingly smoothly. Gina and I had a relaxing Saturday morning with breakfast at home, which was unusual given Gina's infrequent cooking. We were playful, taking care to share food as a subtle check for tampering. Later at our club, I played golf while Gina entertained guests by the pool. We finished the day by dining with friends before returning home for a romantic evening. On Sunday, Gina dropped me off at the workplace on the premise of catching up on work while she went to tennis. I used a disposable phone to contact Barry, who confirmed that Vera's operative would handle Gina's items discreetly in the club. I went onto the website, installed Carlos's program, and let him work while I wondered why I wasn't more furious by my wife and best friend's apparent treachery, as well as Gina's engagement with Josh Daniels. I assumed I was calm because I lacked hard evidence and remembered the adage that revenge is best served cold. Loda Laclo was shown a sentence by the 18th century writer Pierre Ambrose François Chateaubriand. I compartmentalized my emotions, focusing on plotting retribution rather than allowing anger to take control until I had strong evidence. Gina brought me up at 5:30 after her tennis and swim session. We ordered Indian takeout for a nice supper at home, avoided any intimacy, watched a few episodes of The Sopranos, and went to bed, commemorating an unremarkable weekend. Monday was unremarkable as I pretended to be busy while Carlos finished his downloads. On Tuesday, I contacted Barry from a bar to ask for an update. He stated that the incident involving my automobile was arson, carried out professionally by two unidentified men in ski masks who intentionally set fire to the Ford next to my Lexus. What about Domingo's evidence? Will it lead to incrimination? I asked. It should persuade the police that there was an attempt on your life without a doubt, Barry replied. However, tying it to Denim or your wife without more evidence will be difficult. I thought for a moment and then asked, okay, thanks. What else did you discover? David finished working with your computer and his finance team. Something suspicious is going on. They need a day or two to confirm. Someone appears to have siphoned money for roughly 8 months beginning a little more than a year ago through the use of a fictitious company. Perhaps $2 million was taken, nothing more. Then they discreetly switched it off. David believes he can trace it back to a specific machine in your office with a little more effort. Is there any hope of reclaiming the funds? I inquired. It's difficult to say, but it's quite unlikely. The best bet is to identify the thief, notify the cops, and demand compensation. If the money has already been spent, it is probably gone forever. I wasn't pleased with the news. Losing $2 million was not disastrous for me or the company, but it irritated me on principle. However, in comparison to the threat to my life, losing the money seems less serious. So, what about the Gina? Was Vera's team able to identify the flaws and access her computer files? I asked. He coughed and cleared his throat. It's not looking good, Alex. I am not going to lie to you. According to the evidence, she was most likely involved with 2 of the 3 Apex guys you mentioned, Josh Daniels and Eddie Kreidler, and she called Denim from her mobile on Sunday. That pretty much indicates that she is sleeping with him. Jesus, I murmured. I wasn't fully surprised, but having my assumptions verified hit me hard like a quick knock to the head. Barry, give us a few more days to pull things together. Veer's crew is monitoring Agina's phone, the bug in her purse, and the bugs in your home. They are also looking into her phone records and credit cards. It turns out she has 2 cards with her maiden name, and the bills are sent to a post office box. Did you know that? Heck no, I said, still startled. Alex, I understand how difficult this is for you. Can you stay calm a little longer while we finish up? Barry asked with a remarkably soft tone. Barry, I have to. We'll be able to manage. Do you think they'll try again with me? There was a gap before he spoke hesitantly. It's feasible, but they'll be cautious, especially given what happened to your car. They will not want any links traced back to them. You should be fine as long as you take reasonable measures, such as avoiding secluded areas. Do you want me to appoint some personnel to keep an eye on you? Or he offered. No, it's too dangerous with Denim's people around. I will deal with it myself, I replied. I will call you on Thursday. I'm sorry, Alex, Barry spoke, and I responded, yeah, me too, before hanging up. Wednesday was one of the worst days I've ever had as an adult. I realized my marriage was ended, my longtime best buddy was betraying me with my wife, and one or both of them could be attempting to kill me. I spent the day at work, feeling alienated and overwhelmed, unable to communicate my distress with anyone while I pretended to be working and occasionally spoke with Meredith. I was actually absorbed by thoughts of vengeance, waiting for Barry's team to supply the information I needed to conclude my preparations. I managed to keep up the illusion of a loving husband to Gina that evening, sharing a typical night of supper, TV, and togetherness. Her allure somewhat alleviated my disdain and rage. The next morning, I drove Gina's BMW to work as a precaution, knowing that her annoyance would soon be the least of her concerns. I began my day at the office by providing Meredith a list of changes I wanted to make to my schedule, which she agreed to without question. My lone appointment was with our public relations firm at 10 o'clock to ensure seclusion. We arrived to the sounds of loud classical music. After she went, I ate lunch alone at my desk and planned for the afternoon. Jeffrey Denham called and requested an immediate meeting, but I directed Meredith to tell him to return at 4 o'clock, suspecting he was watching my movements. His reaction indicated he was truly anxious, which I found strangely soothing. By 1 p.m., I was in the conference room with only a laptop and a video camera set up to record. We were ready for what came next. "Hey there," I said, "you are Arthur, right?" He gave a smile. "I am delighted to have been acknowledged, indeed, Mr. Macmillan." "Mr. Arthur Wendier, it's already happened. Do you need a demo, or can I leave it with you?" "Just show me," I replied. I needed to record this afternoon's meetings. Arthur adjusted the camera to fit our seating area, and we tested it briefly. "The film is 6 hours long, so it should cover everything," he said. I thanked him, and after he left, I tweaked the laptop settings, turned on the screensaver, and relaxed. Josh Daniels knocked quickly and entered with caution. "Josh, please come in, take a seat," I spoke. "Do you mind if we record our talk?" He seemed concerned and perplexed. "Alex, what is this about?" "We'll get to it shortly. Did you understand everything Meredith said?" "This is a strictly confidential meeting. Do you agree not to discuss any of it with anyone at Apex at now or in the future?" He gave a shrug, still feeling uneasy. "That is correct, Alex. You have the final say, and you are fine with us filming, I guess. But why all this?" I abruptly ended the conversation. "Hold on a moment, Josh. It will all become clear soon." I leaned back and maintained a neutral expression while observing his discomfort. Finally, I ended the silence. "Josh, I am completely familiar with you and my wife." He was visibly startled, attempting unsuccessfully to remain composed. His eyes wouldn't meet mine, they kept moving away from my gaze. "Alex, I'm not sure what you're talking about." "There's no need to act dumb." "Josh, I've got evidence right here," I confidently lied, tapping a thick manila folder on the table beside me. "But now I'd like to hear it directly from you. You're in a real mess, and if you don't come clean, the situation will only get worse. I've been through difficult negotiations in my career, but I've never seen a man look as depressed as Josh did at the time." I relished every moment of his discomfort as I waited for him to try and get out of the situation he was in. After a pause, he spoke. "Alex, can we turn the camera off?" "No, we can't." "Simply spill it." "I'm waiting, Josh. When did it begin, and how exactly did you justify having an affair with the boss's wife for months behind his back?" He fixed his gaze on the table. "Damn it, Alex, it began about 4 years ago and lasted approximately 3 months. I am guessing you are already aware of all of this. Gina tempted me, that was it, pure and simple. Linda and I had known you and her for years, and she'd always been a little flirtatious. Who would not want to be with that body?" He paused abruptly, cringing at how it must have sounded. I remained silent, and he eventually continued. "Anyway, she had a strong attraction to me. One year, at the Christmas party we held in that old ballroom, she was clearly interested, but I couldn't believe she was serious. Then 2 weeks later, while you were away in Chicago, she called and invited me to her house. When I arrived, she was only wearing a sheer nightgown. I couldn't believe it. I attempted to flee, I swear to God, but she drew me in, locked the door, and stood there with a smile on her face. Then she said something bizarre, like 'I've wanted you for a long time, Josh, and now I'll have you.' I am sorry, Alex. I truly am. I currently feel like the world's biggest jerk, but I was 38 years old and had never been with a woman as amazing as Gina before. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't resist. It was as though nothing else mattered. She grabbed my hand and led me to the bedroom, and we stayed close for 2 hours. That was incredible. It was unlike anything I had ever encountered. After that, I was completely captivated by her. I couldn't turn down her calls. Josh sat with his head in his hands, staring at the ground, completely defeated. How long did it last, and what happened at the end? I inquired. She abruptly called it off. She said she had enough one day, and she was not nice about it. I believe it was because I refused to do whatever she wanted. He looked up at me for the first time since he began to confess. Now you can meet my gaze. She asked me to create fake accounts in order to steal money from Apex. Everything was about money, Alex, nothing else. She said you had millions, and she wanted a larger share for herself. She asked me a lot of questions in bed after at first I thought she was joking, but she kept bringing it up. Eventually, I told her I wouldn't do it. He sat up straight in his chair. I won't lie to you, Alex, not anymore. I didn't refuse because of morals or loyalty to you or Apex. By then I would have done anything to stay with Agena, but I couldn't see a way to do what she wanted without risking getting caught, and I wasn't willing to go to jail, not even for her. So when Agena discovered I wouldn't do it, she dumped me. It was probably for the best, especially because Linda was concerned I was having an affair, but it ended before she could discover any proof. I denied it again and over, just lied and lied, swore that it was all extra work projects. I don't think she ever truly believed me, but she kind of let it go. I did everything I could to make it right with her, and happily, we're still together. We sat silently for several minutes. Much of what Josh provided was fresh information to me. Barry's team had already found evidence of their affair, lots of phone calls and hot emails between Josh and Agena pegged to certain days. However, Josh's statement that Agena began the affair and her attempts to take money from the organization were new revelations. I stood up. Okay, Josh, we're finished for today. Go home for the weekend, don't return to your workplace, and don't disclose this talk with anyone inside or outside the organization. Is that clear? I talked in a detached, forceful tone. Yes, Alex, Josh sounded meek and terrified. Should we talk on Monday, Josh? I asked. Until then, go home to Linda and the kids. My conversation with Eddie Kreitzer at 1:30 went similarly. Eddie had ascended the ranks at Apex. He supervised international sales and marketing before becoming the second in charge under me, of course. Gina had targeted him a few months after terminating things with Josh, according to phone and email records, and it lasted over 6 months. Being single, they weren't as cautious. Eddie claimed that Gina initially joked about stealing from the company, but it progressively got more serious. He admitted to considering various approaches, but he never found one that didn't put him at risk. To be honest, Alex, the reason I didn't become involved is that the company is effectively managed, the financial control is rigorous, and I couldn't see a way around it. Gina lost interest in me after I eventually revealed this to her. My conversation with Bernie Eisenhart, Apex's treasurer, took an entirely different turn when I told him, Bernie, I know about you and my wife. He stared at me, surprised but not upset. What exactly do you mean, Alex? I have the pictures right here. I padded the manila folder. There is no point in denying it, photos. He seemed upset. I'm not sure what you have there, Alex, but if it's what I believe it is, you should be talking to Agena, not me. I turned and walked right out of there. I also believed him. He seemed genuinely annoyed, and Barry said that they discovered nothing between him and Agena, other than a phone conversation from her to him. Okay, Bernie, I do believe you. Could you tell me what happened? He remained upset. She invited me to come over. Alex mentioned a surprise party. You asked for my suggestions on what you loved. It didn't make much sense to me. When I arrived, she wore a see-through nightie that barely covered her hips. She drew me in, kissed me, and attempted to kiss me on the lips. I'm sure it's in the photos. What did you do next? I inquired. He replied, I informed her that I couldn't do anything with her. She is married to my boss. So I unlocked the door and headed back to my car. I just sat there waiting for my hard-on to go down, and then I drove off. I didn't see the sense of informing you, Alex, that nothing happened, and truthfully, I was terrified you'd blame me instead of Gina, so I let it go. And now you're accusing me of something," and his voice was becoming increasingly angry. So I interrupted him. "Take it easy, Bernie. Let me clarify. I recently discovered that Gina was cheating on me with at least 2 other individuals at work, and I'm trying to find out what's going on. I believe you. I do not think anything transpired between you two." His rage subsided and amazement took over. 2 additional people? Jesus! He leaned back. "I recall hearing rumors about her and Josh a few years ago. I did not believe it at the moment. I thought it was simply gossip because she's lovely, but after what happened to me, I began to wonder. Nonetheless, I stayed out of it. We talked a little more. I assured him of my trust, apologized for accusing him, and emphasized the importance of secrecy. Then he departed. Meredith entered the meeting room as I was sitting back and pondering on what I had learned. "Alex, Jeff Denham is outside, and he is virtually crazy. I know you planned his meeting for 4 o'clock, but he is frantic to see you right now. He says it's urgent, life or death. If not for the security guards, he'd probably break in here. What shall I do?" I smiled at her. "Just give me 5 minutes, then you can let him inside." I needed those 5 minutes to really appreciate what was about to unfold. Discovering that your best friend wants you dead is an uncommon thing, and having a chance to retaliate is much more unusual. When Jeff Denham walked into the conference room, he appeared nervous, as if he had consumed too much coffee despite his attempts to remain calm. "Hello, Alex, what's up?" He attempted to sound nonchalant, but his tone revealed his nervousness. "Hello, Jeffrey, thank you for coming inside. Do you want some coffee or something?" He shook his head. "What's with the video camera?" I grinned and stated, "I plan to record the meetings today. You don't mind, right?" He appeared uneasy, but all he could reply was, "No problem, not at all." "But what is going on?" Meredith refused to spill anything, and when I met Bernie Eisenhard in the elevator, he just gave me a strange nod and continued moving. I turned the laptop towards him and said, "Take a look," as he clicked his mouse. The screensaver disappeared, displaying a frozen clip from a video taken in my bedroom earlier that week. It showed Gina without clothes on her back while Jeff handed her BJ. Gina's head was thrown back as if she was enjoying herself. Denham looked up at me, his expression filled with disbelief. I waited until he stuttered, "Alex, before punching him in the right eye with my fist. He tumbled backward, smacking his head on the carpeted floor as his mobile chair moved away from the table. Standing over him, I took off the thick winter glove from my hand. It still throbbed horribly, but I did not believe I had broken any knuckles. I sat there grimly, smiling and caressing my wounded hand, waiting for Denham to wake up. It took many minutes before he opened his eyes, sighed, and caressed his face as he became more aware. He looked around for me and swiftly sat against the wall, appearing ashamed and wary. "Want more, slimy jerk? I can still hit you with my other hand," I spoke lightly, almost flippantly. "Oh no, Alex." He looked towards the door as if deciding whether he could flee or if I would apprehend him before he could forget it. "Dawdle, the 2 guards are still outside, you aren't leaving just yet," I said. We remained there for a while more, and I watched him painfully analyze his situation. He probably hoped I didn't know everything, but he was going to be extremely disappointed. "Okay, Dowdell, get up and sit back down at the table. Do not worry, I will not hit you again. What comes next for you is far worse than that," I said. He stood up slowly and sat down in a chair approximately 10 feet away from me, his gaze fixed on my face. "I won't waste much more time on you. You're a piece of crap. I think we've been best buddies since middle school, and you're a shame," I continued. He didn't answer, so I went on. You not only slept with my wife and attempted to steal from me, but you also planned to kill me. At this point, he jerked his head abruptly, peering at me in amazement and horror. And you are about to make some new acquaintances in prison. Gina has admitted everything to me. I continued lying through my teeth, and I know the theft and murder plot were entirely your idea, wasn't it? Wasn't it enough to betray me? You thought murdering me would simply top it all off? For God's sake, Alex, that is not true, he sounded desperate. She is lying. I admit it. I engaged in an affair with Gina. There's no point in denying it now, but stealing from you and planning to kill you was entirely her idea. I tried several times to talk her out of it, he continued, and when that failed, I exclaimed, "What the hell?" And planned to sabotage my car. Is this it? He hung his head and avoided my gaze. Within minutes, he had spilled everything. The affair began similarly to Josh and Eddie's relationship. Gina had come on strong, and Denham couldn't resist. He claimed he resisted her advances several times before giving in, but in the end, didn't that detail really matter? He never told me about it and ended up sleeping with her. Gina, unlike the other parties involved, began discussing stealing some of my money after about 3 months of sleeping with Denham. Denham set up a fake subsidiary before agreeing to her plan, and he was able to channel legitimate payments through accounts receivable, diverting them to the fake company where he was the head of security, which included overseeing finances. He kept others from looking too closely at his scheme. He stole around $1.8 million over the course of 7 months. Gina was dissatisfied with what Barry's team had discovered so far. Alex, Denham now spoke openly. She claimed you had so much money that $1 million or $2 million wouldn't be missed. It was unfair, so I closed the account and did my best to cover my tracks. A month later, she mentioned ending you, then we could get together. I doubt all of that. You could run the business or let others do it while we enjoy some of that lovely money. She wouldn't give up on it. Every time we got together, she had a new plan for what we should do afterward. He sighed deeply. After you were dead, she had your money, and you had believed her. I was stupid, Alex. The closeness was incredible, the most exciting thing that has ever happened to me. I convinced myself that she loved me, or I thought I was. I resisted for a long time, but then she hinted that if I didn't do it for her, perhaps we weren't meant to be together. After a few weeks of this, it appeared that I had no choice. Alex, Gina is a ruthless monster. Once she got an idea in her head, she wouldn't let go. So I finally made some calls and found a guy who knew how to do this kind of thing. He said tampering with your brake line would be easy, and if done right, no one would suspect a thing. He looked at me with anguish on his face. I know you'll never forgive me. How could you? But I still can't believe I did it. It was like I was someone else, like Gina programmed me, and I just followed her orders, like I was her little puppet. Were you planning to try again? I already knew the answer, having seen the video Asimov had sent me. In a strange voice, he said she wanted to. I insisted we wait a few weeks to avoid suspicion about the car. I was doing my best to delay her, but she wouldn't give up. She was determined. He buried his face in his hands. Denham was shattered, defeated. He didn't even try to deny what had happened. I asked him about the stolen money, and without hesitation, he gave me the details of the 2 offshore accounts where he had hidden it, except for about $60,000 Gina has already spent. It was a little after 4:30. I handed Denham over to the guards who would keep him until the police arrived. Then I leaned back in the conference room chair, waiting for Gina, scheduled to arrive at 5 o'clock. With each new revelation, the shocking truth sank in deeper. Not only had my wife been cheating on me and stealing from me, but she had also attempted to have me killed. How does a person even begin to comprehend that? What did it mean that I had lived with this woman, mostly happily for over 8 years, without truly knowing who she was? Gina swept into the conference room about 20 minutes late, as usual, looking glamorous yet slightly annoyed. "Babe, what's all this about? Meredith practically ordered me to come here to meet you, but she wouldn't say why. Is something wrong with the company, and why did you leave me without a car this morning?" I watched her closely, seeing through her irritation behind the facade. Gina was worried. Most likely she and Denham had been on the phone all day trying to figure out what was happening. "Honey, please sit down," I said. "Okay, this won't be easy for me." I sat silently, wrestling with my emotions, observing her struggle to remain composed. I was determined to savor every moment of this confrontation. After a tense silence during which Gina's knee nervously jiggled, I finally spoke. "Gina, I know you cheated on me. How could you do this to me? I thought you loved me." She tried to remain still, but her eyes widened, and she tensed up slightly. I watched as she quickly adjusted her expression to one of sorrow and sympathy. It was remarkably fast. She must have anticipated this. "Baby, I am so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. It's just... I guess you were away so much, and I felt lonely and abandoned," she said, tears welling up. It was convincing. I might have been swayed if I didn't already know the whole truth. Still crying, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Alex, is there any way you can forgive me? I don't want to lose you." "I don't know, Gina. I really don't know," I murmured, my voice breaking purposefully. Then after a pause, "But I need you to tell me about it. When did it start? How long did it go on, and why? Most importantly, why did you do this? Sweetheart, please don't make me talk about it. We can move past this. I promise I'll make it up to you. I'll be the best wife you could possibly know," she pleaded. "Gina," I murmured, "if we're going to move forward, you have to be honest with me right now." "Right now. When did it start? How long did it last?" I had her cornered, and I was relishing it. She didn't know whose affair I was aware of, and by speaking in the past tense, I made her think it might not be Denham but someone else. Now she had to guess, and if she guessed incorrectly, she'd be admitting to an affair I purportedly didn't even know about. Reluctantly, she began to explain. "Like I said, Alex, it was when you were gone a lot. I felt lonely and abandoned. I understand it's not fair. You work so hard and accomplish so much, creating a company for both of us, but I suppose I let it get to me, and then I had a few beers, and he made a move. I just gave in." I chuckled to myself. "Gina, you made an admirable effort, but you're not yet free of responsibility. When did this occur, Gina? I truly do need to know." She rose, walked around the table, and attempted to throw herself into my arms, tears flowing down her cheeks. "Alex, I sincerely apologize," but I held her back, staring into her eyes and asking again, "When was it?" I noticed a fast mental calculation flash through her eyes. She sighed, sat in the chair beside me, and confessed she had placed a bet on Josh Daniels about 4 years ago. I chuckled to myself. "Gina, you made a good effort. It's too bad you don't know there is no correct choice," and she glanced at me, frustration seeping behind her sorry countenance as she realized she didn't have much of a choice. It lasted a few months. I don't know why, Alex. I've just lost control. I knew something was wrong, and finally, I told Josh that I couldn't continue. It was ripping me apart. I cried all the time, she said, her expression shifting dramatically from minutes before. I interrupted her with "You also cheated on me with Josh." Her expression at that time was something else. Her milky eyes were filled with frantic fear as she said, baby, I do not understand." I yelled. Eddie Creedler was not the only one. Gina howled, "You slept with 2 of my staff. What were your thoughts?" She attempted to interject to slow me down, but I was on a roll. "Gina, how do we repair this? How will I ever trust you again?" Everyone at Apex must have been laughing behind my back. The boss and his wife sleep with the employees. Simply get in line, she will get to you eventually. Who else have you slept with? What about the janitor? No, darling, I swear it was just the 2 of us. How could I believe that? I demanded. You might have been sleeping with everyone I've ever done business with. Did you sleep with Dan Cameron prior to his departure? What about our pal Archie? Debbie's husband Peter, or Doodle? How will I know you have not been with all of them? Gina grasped her opportunity. Her expression became serious, and she reached out to take both of my hands in hers, saying in a quiet, earnest voice, "Alex, I swear to God, it was only those 2, and it happened years ago. I deeply regret it. Since then, I have been entirely loyal to you, and I plan to be for the rest of my life." The room went silent. I gazed at her with a mixture of exhaustion and regret, concealing the delight I felt, knowing her demise was near. "Okay, Gina," I said softly, "you cheated on me with 2 of my employees, but then you stopped. You pulled yourself together and determined to return to being my loving wife. Is this it?" "Yes, baby," she responded, hope beginning to shine in her eyes. "There's one more thing I need to ask," I explained, positioning the laptop in front of her. "Could you please explain what is happening here?" I pressed a few keys. This time the screensaver disappeared, and the video began to play. We watched Jeff pleasuring Gina, and her shouts of pleasure were evident as she urged him, "Yes, yes, baby. Do it like that. Yes, baby, right there." I need to give Gina credit, she did not back away from the laptop as if it were a snake. She did not try to exit the room, nor did she scream. There was only a brief exchange that ended almost as soon as it began. After a few seconds, she closed the laptop and turned to face me, her countenance shifted dramatically from minutes before. Her face was stiff with rage, her eyes flashing, and her lips curved into a sneer. "Okay, Alex, you got me. Good for you. What would you like me to say?" "Yes, I was with Dowdall, and he satisfied me far more than you ever did." "Is that correct, Gina? Does it explain why you attempted to kill me?" That struck her hard. She froze for a time, staring at me with all she could muster. "What? I don't know what you're talking about, really," she said, her voice now low and contemptuous. I replied calmly. I opened the laptop, hit a few keys, and turned it so she could see. It showed our kitchen with Gina and Denham seated at the table in robes. Gina was speaking, "I do not care, Dowdall. So we were unlucky, and the car did not crash. You can try again. You don't realize how perilous this is. If anyone begins to investigate into this, they will be laughed at. You fully damage the car, along with several others who will suspect anything. We simply need another technique to get rid of him. Can't you poison him or stage a shooting to seem like a robbery?" I hit the button, and the video stopped. I smiled at Gina. Too bad I already have this video. It will be difficult to refute any involvement in court. I noticed Gina's steely gaze as she sought to find a way out of the trap. She stopped pretending to be remorseful or affectionate. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and contemptuous. "You will never report this to the police, Alex. It would make you a laughingstock and damage Apex's reputation. The CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company and his wife are sleeping with the employees. You'd be a global joke." She leaned back, smug and disapproving. I called Meredith and asked her to bring Nancy Leggett in. When she arrived, she sat across from Gina and me, glaring at my wife. Nancy, Gina believes that arresting her for grand theft and attempted murder would be disastrous for both me and the business. Why don't you tell her what you said to me earlier today, with a smile, Nancy? Sure, Alex. This entire story, Gina, Denham, and their messed up little plan will dominate cable news for a long time. It has everything: money, cheating, attempted murder, a strikingly attractive woman, betrayal among best friends, you name it. It will be bigger than Paris Hilton, larger than the Anna Nicole Smith saga. Gina will be the scandal of the month, and Apex will receive more attention than it has ever had, even with $500 million in advertising. Alex will appear on Larry King and The Today Show, you name it. He'll be remembered as a trustworthy, hard-working businessman who was duped by a deceitful woman and her puppet. By the time the trial is over and Gina and Denham are in jail, Business Week and the Wall Street Journal will have covered Apex extensively. Alex might even win the Entrepreneur of the Year award. The company could generate $100 million in new revenue, and Alex will most likely receive 10,000 letters from women vying to be the next Mrs. Macmillan. Some may even send photographs. This is a blessing for Apex. It's not so good for your wife, Gina, at least not right now. However, as his public relations representative, you are about to make a wealthy and successful man even richer and more successful. I could not have come up with anything better. Nancy winked and exited the room, leaving Gina looking defeated for the first time ever. I picked up the phone. Meredith, you can call the cops right now. The next 14 months were full of drama. Gina and Denham were charged with several offenses, including attempted murder and fraud. Apex's lawyers filed a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen funds revealed by Denham's confession. I also filed for divorce on the basis of adultery. Their assets were frozen as a result of the legal actions, forcing them to rely on public defenders after making bail. I kicked Gina out and obtained a restraining order based on a video of her and Denham plotting another attempt on my life. She moved in with a friend and did not try to contact me again. I fired Josh and Eddie the following Monday. Eddie asked for a positive reference, which I agreed to. Josh offered to testify against Gina in exchange for assistance finding work, but I declined, reminding him that I had his confession on tape. I promoted Bernie Eisenhart to CFO, trusting him to handle the role and fill the other positions. Gina and Denham's trial began approximately 7 months later and lasted nearly 3 weeks. I attended on occasion, watching as they failed to deny their actions while blaming each other. Gina attempted to persuade the male jurors with her appearance and lies, but the video of her incriminating herself was too convincing. Gina and Denham were convicted on 8 major charges and faced 10 to 15 years in prison. Gina was able to secure interviews and pay for top lawyers who have since filed appeals, thanks to the media attention generated by the trial. Denham Security Company has closed, and nearly all of the stolen money has been returned to TechPeak, with the exception of $72,000. I asked Barry Asimov in Los Angeles for a recommendation. He recommended David Carlos, who was eager to relocate to the Bay Area and grow his business. I hired him to manage TechPeak's security. During a visit to Asimov's office, he showed me an unexpected video of Gina and Charlie Pemberton, a lawyer who had drafted our prenuptial agreement but was now unsuccessfully seeking loopholes for Gina. After I exposed Charlie's unethical behavior, he was disbarred, and I sued him. I recovered $240,000 and donated it to charity. The scandal increased TechPeak's profile significantly. Nancy Leggett predicted a media frenzy. We received nearly a 20% increase in business after being featured in major news outlets. Nancy had to hire 3 new staff to manage the media attention. We also received over 8,000 letters from women, some quite forward. I handed off responding to these to one of Nancy's interns, which might have been an interesting task for him. Local single women and divorcees began appearing too. Gina had kept me satisfied in bed until everything unraveled, so I didn't feel the need to explore other options. I went on dates with 4 women I found attractive and slept with 2 of them, though I could have with the other 2 if I wanted. However, I quickly realized that the casual lifestyle wasn't really my thing. After a few weeks of closely working with Nancy, I realized she was someone I wanted to date. We've been seeing each other for almost a year now. Neither of us is rushing into marriage, but it's something we might consider down the line. Last Sunday was my birthday, and Nancy surprised me with a special gift. We had spent Saturday night at her place, watching an old Humphrey Bogart movie and then making love. Closeness with Nancy is wonderful, gentle and intimate compared to Gina, who preferred it rough, sweaty, and athletic. With Nancy, it's not just about physical pleasure, it's about emotional connection, and it's amazing. On Sunday morning, Nancy let me sleep while she made breakfast and brought it to the bedroom on a tray. I woke up to find her standing there in a robe. We ate together, and then she said, "Ready for your present?" "Actually, I'm wearing it under this robe." I raised an eyebrow, and she grinned mischievously. "Ready?" she asked, and then she slipped off her robe, revealing herself wearing a white t-shirt that reached just past her hips with a printed image of a stern-looking Gina, likely taken from a photo Nancy found at my house. Below the photo in bold letters, the shirt read, "I survived the monster." I burst out laughing, then I said, "Come here, you." I pulled Nancy down onto the bed with me, and after a few moments, we removed the shirt. Here's the next story. My name is Jackson Healy, but most people call me Jack. I can't believe I've been standing in my bedroom doorway for nearly 10 minutes, watching my wife, Dakota, having lovemaking with a stranger. I've had enough time to record it on my iPhone and take some clear pictures. They still haven't noticed me, and from what I could see, I had time to take more notes, but honestly, it was getting a bit repetitive. As I watched, I realized the guy seemed familiar, maybe because he was similar to me. He wasn't younger, taller, or in better shape, brown hair, blue eyes, 10 fingers, and 10 toes, just like me. You get the point. So what was the appeal? It struck me that the attraction was simply that he wasn't me. It's a cliché, but I came home a day early from a business trip and saw a strange car in the driveway, leading to this moment. Another thing that bothered me, why did my wife have her lover park in the middle of our driveway? We live in a cul-de-sac with 12 other houses, and we're a friendly community. Wasn't she worried someone would find out? Finding your wife in bed with another man is shocking, but what hurt most was seeing her exhibit behavior she never showed in our 8 years of marriage. Our bed life was vanilla but satisfying, or so I thought. She never hinted she wanted anything different until now. Clearly she liked it. In all the years I've known her, she never spoke such words in lust or any other situation. I also didn't get any words of encouragement from Dakota. She'd been passionately growling into her lover's ear for the past 10 minutes. Strangely, I didn't feel a blinding rage. I didn't want to grab a weapon or use one of my daughter's aluminum softball bats to shot them. I was angry, sad, hurt, and confused as any husband would be, but I think the lack of rage came from accepting that my marriage was over. Why she did it might be interesting to know someday, but right now, it didn't matter. She did it, and our marriage ended, case closed. As I debated what to do next, I noticed an unopened box of Trojans on Dakota's bedside. Why have contraceptives if you're not going to utilize them? I mumbled. After we had our 2 kids, Sheridan, 13, and Helena, 11, Dakota made me use contraception until I got a vasectomy. She stated 2 kids were enough, but I longed for a boy. I've always regretted not being more assertive about that. Then I saw something missing. Dakota used to have 4 images on her bedside, which I dubbed her shrine. Now 2 were gone, the biggest one, a family portrait from when the girls were tiny, and our wedding photo. The wedding photo was the smallest, which I never thought much of, but maybe I should reconsider. She left our girls' photos for her lover to see. They were merely baby images she framed years ago, maybe from kindergarten. The subject of where the images went didn't seem essential today. Maybe it was shock or an out-of-body experience, but it became my most pressing concern. After some consideration, I realized they should be in Dakota's second drawer, a habit she had with the pricey Drexel Heritage chest of drawers. I quietly opened the drawer, and there they were. How did I know? Dakota had a tendency to clean before the regular cleaners arrived, putting away any items that were laying around. I once asked her whether she believed the cleaners would steal her hairbrush, and she looked at me like I was insane. I assumed it was just her peculiarity until I brought it up at a neighbor's party, expecting some chuckles. Instead, her pals treated me as if I were dumb. Of course, you clean before the cleaners arrive. Another thought struck me, perhaps she hid the images to show respect, given the circumstances. It was difficult to believe. Maybe her lover pushed on it without knowing why. I carefully withdrew the photos from the drawer and chose to leave with them in hand. I snuck out of the home. It was just 3 a.m., so I decided to come into work. After being gone for several days, there was surely a pile of irrelevant documents on my desk. I arrived, sneaked inside my office, and locked the door behind me, blocking out everything and everyone else. First, I placed the 2 photographs on my desk as a reminder of something. I gathered my confidence and called my old friend, A.H. Dixon, a family lawyer I knew in college. Back then, he was a wealthy child staying in our dorm because his parents wanted him to realize how fortunate he was. He insisted on being addressed as N.H., which I considered pretentious. Dixon has certainly advanced in the world. I had to go through 3 assistants to reach him because he refused to give me his cell phone number, saying it was only for clients to check billable hours. I assumed all pretentious people had at least 2 phones. Jackson, it's fantastic to hear from you. How can I help you? And is spoken purposefully to avoid calling him Jack, in order to anger him. Jackson said frustrated, I need your cell phone number. Ennis, crap, what happened? And it is asked with concern creeping into his voice. Jackson told him everything. As far as I know, they're still doing it in my bed right now. He said, his voice quivering with rage. Damn, this is horrible. What would you like to do? Ennis inquired, sounding astonished and serious. Divorce, simple and straightforward, except I want her and her partner to be in pain, Jackson stated, his voice sharpening with determination. Well, buddy, you are fortunate for 2 reasons. First and foremost, I am the state's top family law attorney. Second, you do not live in a no-fault state. I know you want primary custody, but it's not easy, not impossible, but not simple. Also, even if we show infidelity, she is likely to receive alimony because she is a homemaker and you are a high-income earner. So even in a fictitious state, you could get a bad deal. Allow me to focus my investigations on Dakota and her lover. It will be expensive, but if you want custody, we need more than simply the fact that she made love in your bed. We need to know everything about her lover and their relationship, and it's discussed outlining the nuances of the scenario. Do it, I'm not concerned about the price, Jackson replied without hesitation. You should never say it to a lawyer, Jackson and his men issued a warning when he noticed his friend's frustration. He paused and got serious. Sorry, Jackson, I did not intend to take this lightly. I do not want an apology, and I want you to be merciless, Jackson insisted, his tone icy and uncompromising. I can be ruthless. This may take several weeks, and I need you to behave normally with your wife. Can you do that? Unless requested, ensuring Jackson knew the gravity of the issue. Yes, Jackson agreed. He gave Ennis the information he needed, emailed him the evidence he had, and sent him a prepaid rent form, which Jackson signed and returned via DocuSign while still on the phone. He hung up feeling depressed yet determined. A knock on the door interrupted his self-pity. "Come in," Jackson called his administrative assistant. Franny Gable entered hesitantly. "Is everything okay, boss?" she asked timidly. "Yes, Franny, everything is fine. I finished my work early and decided to return," Jackson replied, attempting to sound normal. "I understand, Jack, but when you brushed past me without acknowledging me, I became concerned. Plus, you've been here for more than an hour," Franny spoke with concern in her voice. "Sorry, Franny, I simply have a lot on my mind." Jackson admitted that Franny had been his assistant for more than 15 years. He hired her on Dakota's request. She was Dakota's longtime friend who had fallen on hard times after her husband died in a work accident. He was a non-combatant military member, so his life insurance policy was only worth $12,000. If he died in combat, Franny would have received $100,000. With 2 children, $12,000 was not enough. It was hard for her. But Jackson never regretted hiring her. She turned out to be an excellent assistant. "Okay, Jack, I'll go home now," Franny said, though she seemed unconvinced. As she was about to leave, she noticed the photographs on his desk and paused. "What are these new ones?" "Yes, I brought them here to remind myself why I'm doing this and what's important to me," Jackson replied, trying to maintain his composure. "That's so nice, boss." "Have a nice evening," Franny said, smiling. "Bye, Franny," Jackson said, wanting to tell her but remembering Anderson's advice about acting normal. How could he act normal after seeing his wife having lovemaking with someone else in their bed just hours ago? Going to a hotel wasn't an option since too many people had already seen him. So he decided to go home. During the 20-minute drive, he kept trying to figure out how to act normal, but he had no idea. When he pulled into the garage, Dakota heard him and met him at the door. Her eyes showed fear, anxiety, and a bit of anger, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "My God, Jack, you're home. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow," Dakota said, feigning surprise. "I thought I'd surprise you. I arrived around 3 and decided to finish the day at the office," Jackson replied, trying to sound casual. "Well, we're glad you're home, honey. Dinner will be ready in a few minutes, but there's not much since I wasn't expecting you," Dakota said, kissing his cheek. "It's okay, I'm not very hungry. I'll change out of the suit, it feels like I've been wearing it for weeks," Jackson said, heading upstairs. The girls caught up with them, hugging and laughing. "We're so glad you're home." "We love you, Daddy," they chorused. "I love you guys too. I missed you so much," Jackson said, their greeting giving him courage and direction. He knew he could handle the deception for their sake. Freed from the girls, he continued to what used to be his bedroom. Everything looked normal, the bed linen smelled fresh, and the room was clean but unremarkable. Their bedroom had always remained pristine, which made sense. Dakota probably caught him glancing at her nightstand. The 2 missing images were the only thing out of place. As he struggled to control his emotions, her voice stunned him. "Sorry, honey, I accidentally shattered the frames while cleaning. I took them to Erin Brothers to get them repaired." Dakota described her tone as carefully neutral. "I merely nodded without looking at her and kept changing my clothing. She departed at some point. In case you were wondering, she smelled like a daisy, like she always did when I arrived home. Dakota was nervous the entire evening, so my acting was not believable. I largely avoided her by spending time with the girls and assisting them with their homework. Dinner was unusually calm for such a vibrant and raucous environment. The girls suspected something was wrong but did not pursue it." Dakota's face was an inscrutable mask. If I was going to pretend everything was normal, as Ennis desired, I had to do better. After the girls had gone to bed, I poured myself a glass of Maker's Mark and relaxed in my comfortable office chair, my man cave, the only room in the house I could call my own, reflecting my preferences. Dakota described it as an embarrassment. I knew I had to confront her before bed and was contemplating how when she walked in looking concerned. Normally, Dakota avoided my room. She approached the sofa opposite my chair. "Come here, sit on my lap," I whispered gently, patting my knees. Her expression brightened, and she swiftly sat on my lap. I kissed her cheeks. "I apologize for being so off throughout supper. My trip did not go as planned, and I have a lot to figure out. I simply needed a break." She perked up. "It's okay, Jack. I sensed something was bothering you. Allow me to help you forget about your work concerns tonight." However, she did not make me forget my problems. We made love, and it was the same gentle closeness as before. We snuggled a lot, and both seemed content. I assumed that was what she wanted. It was completely different from what I had seen before. Dakota hugged me tightly, saying, "You know I love you, Jack. I really do. You've made my life complete." I nearly threw up. How could she have lied so easily? Her deceit rolled off her tongue like a recipe. The answer struck me. She had been doing this for a while. This realization sent shivers down my spine, and a heaviness settled over my chest. She fell asleep moments later. Less than 8 hours earlier, she had been with her lover in this bed, and now she falls asleep immediately. What kind of person can accomplish this? Needless to say, I did not sleep at all. I was able to pull myself together and leave for work early. I needed to leave before Dakota got up to prepare the girls for school. I left a note on the kitchen's dry erase board. I had to leave early for work to begin resolving the issues I mentioned earlier. I managed to behave normally for the next 2 weeks. As the days passed, we waited for news from Ennis. I started to feel better. Perhaps this is how liars improved their lying skills. Enough time for practice. Dakota, on the other hand, became increasingly anxious. She appeared to have a lot on her mind, but never spoke to me. She was always affectionate, but seemed to make an extra effort to be sensitive. She probably told me she loved me 25 times a day and complimented my outfit. She should have been concerned about the missing photos, but she followed the don't ask, don't tell principle. I hoped this would last for a while. Franny was acting strange. She knew me so well that she could detect any shifts in my mood or behavior. She kept insisting on talking about it, which irritated me. I told her I was under pressure at work, but would be fine. She always knew when I was lying. What bothered me was her incessant staring at the photographs on my desk. I've long admitted that I'm not good at reading women's emotions. I couldn't tell whether Franny was sad, worried, or angry, but her expression was always strange when I looked at the photos. I believe women are better at this than men. I started to question my sanity. I felt numb and detached, as if a 50-pound weight was on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I pretended to live, desperate for this nightmare to end. Then Ennis called, asking me to come to his office urgently. "Yes, we've got them cornered, but brace yourself, Jackson," and he said, "She dated Mr. Du Bois a long time ago, even before we were married." According to my information, he bragged about having lovemaking with Dakota the morning of your wedding. He claimed she told him she was giving you sloppy seconds on your wedding night, and it's revealed his voice heavy with disgust. I should have gone berserk, but all I could think to ask was, "How did your investigators find out?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's better if you don't know, Jackson. A lot of the good stuff can't be used in court anyway. If I weren't such a good lawyer, we might get in trouble," he said, attempting to lighten the mood with a laugh. "Damn it, kids, I wonder if they're mine," I muttered, the realization hitting me hard from his look. Is that all, isn't it? I asked, dreading his response. Holy crap, Ennis, maybe she's married to him too, one of those bigamists with 2 families, I speculated, the absurdity of the situation dawning on me. Du Bois is married, but not to your wife. He has his own family, married for 10 years with 3 kids under 8. It'll be easy to expose them if you're willing, and it's explained. I don't know, Inez, I don't want to ruin his wife and kids' lives, I said, feeling a pang of guilt. Jackson, you'd be doing them a favor if you watch the video of Dakota and him. You'll see he's tearing you and his wife apart. Dakota doesn't join in much, but she doesn't stop him either. He only married his wife because Dakota wouldn't leave you for him, and as stated, his voice firm, Ennis, with everything you've learned, why does she want to stay married to me? I asked, confusion and hurt in my voice. We haven't figured that out yet, but we're working on it. Just give us time, he reassured me. I can't control myself anymore. When can we serve her? I demanded, my patience wearing thin. Soon, Jackson, but I'm working on something worth the wait, and as promised, life went on. Dakota was very affectionate, making the girls behave well. We made love more often, but nothing changed in how we did it. She always seemed happy. I didn't think she could fake satisfaction for so long, which made her betrayal even more disturbing. I was driving myself crazy trying to understand her actions. How could she say one thing and still cheat? I decided to fake it myself until I could end it. What was Anna's waiting for anyway? The following Monday, he called me to his office. And, usually a jokester, looked like he might be physically ill. Look, Jack, I don't really know how to tell you this, but it might change your perspective on custody, and this began his voice grave. Are they not mine? I asked, the fear increasing. We need a DNA test to be sure, but no, I don't think they are, he added, his expression somber. How much worse? Ennis, I asked. My voice barely a whisper, they know, Jack. Ennis responded, what do you mean? I interrupted sharply, the daughters know Du Bois is their father. We have video of Du Bois, Dakota, and the girls having a park picnic on Sunday. They called him Dad. He and your wife touched hands, kissed, and played with Sheridan and Helena, as explained, his voice softened with pity. Everything went dark. Dakota had told me she was taking the girls to the park while I was washing the lawn last Sunday. Paralegal, Ennis was pushing a cold towel over my forehead and calling my name. Jackson, what has happened to you? You are unconscious. Let me call the paramedics, and he said it with a terrified no. I will be all right, I shook my head, hoping to clear it. Sorry about it, Ennis. It seems like my entire life has been a swindle. I spoke in my own voice. Hello, buddy, Ennis answered, you just said the magic word. What's the word? I asked, confused. Fraud, if I were you, I would seek vengeance. Warning his wife and divorcing Dakota would not be sufficient. Did you know that you can terminate a marriage for fraud? He explained a plan for me. We have been married for 18 years, Annie. How may I obtain an annulment now? I asked, disbelief coloring my tone. The duration is irrelevant. You only need to apply within 4 years of uncovering the deception. It will not be easy, but it is worth trying. An annulment relieves you of the need to pay alimony. It is unlikely that you will be required to pay child support, but that is up to the judge, he clarified. Child support? Seriously? I asked incredulously. Unless we can establish Dakota and Du Bois duped you into parenting his children, you may be stuck. But that isn't the major cause to seek annulment. A divorce will not generate notoriety, but an annulment after 18 years will. It will publicly embarrass them and strengthen our case for child support reimbursement. Plus, I'll earn 40% and give you a 5% discount. You will receive the ruthlessness you requested. As I mentioned, he had a slight smile on his face. Your charity is wonderful, and as I already stated, taps my heart cynically. That is not all, Jack, he continued, leaning forward. We discovered further interesting information. I listened to him, and we made plans. By then, nothing surprised me anymore. When I returned to the workplace, Franny ambushed me. Jack, what happened? You look dreadful. I will take you to the doctor right now, Franny argued, her concern evident. No, Franny, I said, hoping to reassure her. But Jack, she pressed, not convinced. Miss Gable, I said, startling her with my tone. She unwillingly left, looking quite depressed. I didn't care because I had already been enlightened at Ennis's office. I expected this and was not disappointed. Not even 30 minutes after I released Franny, Dakota came to the doorway. She was breathtaking, wearing 4-inch heels and a plunging neckline. Damn, she was attractive. What a loss, Franny had called me. She mentioned that something had happened, Dakota stated. I grunted rudely and interrupted her. I tried to remain calm while she peered at the images, as if she knew precisely where to look. She sat in front of my desk, definitely not wearing any panties. Did she truly believe this would help? You were there, did you see us? She said, appearing sorrowful. However, even when I was chatting normally, her remark struck hard. It means nothing, Jack, she said. It's only a fling. It doesn't compare to what we have together. I realized she wasn't going to give up her boyfriend. Tell me something, Dakota, I asked. How long? It's not the first time, honey, but only in a few months. She almost seemed sincere. 2 months, I pressed. How many times? Just 3 or 4, baby. Never in our home. I screwed up. It is over. Let us forget about it, she lied effortlessly and without guilt. No sweating, fidgeting, or looking away. I thanked her for being honest. Most cheaters would lie, claiming it was their first time, but she showed me who she truly was, and I appreciated it. She flinched slightly at my last statement, but appeared to sense something. Do not do this, Jack. It will not go well for you. You'll be hurt in unimaginable ways. Just leave it and move on. I love you, you love me, and we both adore the girls. Please let it go, she pleaded. Dakota, it almost sounds like you are threatening me, I noted. I apologized if it came off that way, honey. I meant you could decide how much my failures hurt us, but most of all, Jack, it will harm Helena and Sheridan. They did not do anything wrong. I did. Let's talk more tonight. I'm confident we can work this out, she suggested. Okay, we will talk tonight, but I need to get back to work, I said. She kissed me fervently, perhaps she mistook me for her boyfriend. We're so good together, baby. Don't let my weakness destroy our family, she said before turning and walking out as if she had nothing to do with it. I was shocked. I sat for 5 minutes before using the intercom. Miss Gable, please come inside. Franny entered with her eyes red and swollen. How long have you known? You told her about the photos, didn't you? I demanded silence. She wiped her eyes with a handkerchief while sitting and looking down. I'm waiting for a response, I replied firmly. She looked up, tears falling down her cheeks. So, I'm Miss Gable, now Jack, after all of these years. Yes, I replied coldly, and for the time being, my name is Mr. Healy. Are you planning to fire me, Joe? I mean, Mr. Healy, I really need this job, she sobbed. Not if you give me an honest answer and agree to testify before my lawyer. What is your choice? I asked for my patience, which was wearing thin. I've known for a long time, she confessed, her voice barely audible. Disgusted. I picked up the office phone. Hi Georgina, I need to talk to William about a problem. William, Franny asked, panic rising in her voice. Bill Cody, the VP of HR, I clarified. Franny interrupted me, desperation in her eyes. Please don't do this. I'm so sorry, Mr. Healy. I knew about this before you hired me. What did you know, Miss Gable? I asked, for my voice hardening. She hesitated again. I slammed my palm on the table. The loud bang startled her. I'm losing patience. You know about her activities. I demanded. I'm tired of these games, Miss Gable. Tell me the truth now, I insisted. I saw her struggling. I won't accept anything but the complete truth. Franny, I said, softening my tone, please Franny, you owe me this for helping you. I need to understand why you betrayed me. It took her a moment to compose herself, then she told me everything. Byron Du Bois was her maternal cousin. She knew about his relationship with Dakota, which started in high school. She knew Helena and Sheridan weren't my children, and that Du Bois fathering them was deliberate. Each revelation was another dagger in my heart, not just from Dakota's betrayal, but from Franny's betrayal. I trusted you completely, Franny, I said, emotional. Why was Dakota so desperate for me to hire you? She wanted me to inform her if you got close to discovering her other life. Franny said, lowering her head, embarrassed. Is she embarrassed now? She also wanted me to let her know if you ever cheated on her. For God's sake. Do you have any idea why she wanted to marry me? She was just here professing her love and begging to stay married. You won't believe it, but she really loves you. Franny explained. I asked her years ago. She said she loves you but needs to bow out too. Franny explained. She ruined my life because she wanted your cousin. I was shocked, and Franny nodded. Why children? Franny, I asked, pointing for her to continue. Are you sure you want to know? It's worse than you can imagine. People tell me this all the time. How much worse can it go, Franny? Tears stopped. She looked at me with pity but didn't lie or hide anything. Dakota requested Byron to get her pregnant so her children would have alpha genes. She hesitated, measuring my reaction. So, I'm a beta? I asked, realizing the ridiculousness of the situation. Yes, she desired alpha bloodlines but wanted a beta like you to raise kids lovingly and compassionately. She believed your character was better suited for raising her children. Byron agreed. She required both an alpha and a beta to feel complete. Franny explained. I laughed widely. It was too ludicrous. I'll schedule an appointment for you with Ennis and demand the complete truth. I added. She nodded and departed. I had no idea what I was going to do but was certain I wasn't going home. I contacted my friend Butch, thinking she was still at the office. Thankfully she was. So I went to visit her. Let me tell you about Butch. Her true name is Cheyenne Gillette. And she is the director. She is a retired United States citizen Navy commander. Was the first woman to qualify for the BAD as a naval school before a knee ailment halted her chances. She's tough as nails and avoids getting too close to anyone. At work, she's a proud, dedicated lesbian who prefers to be called queer. One day, she told me, if you're going to call me a lesbian, capitalize the L. But I prefer queer. Just smile while you say it. I didn't quite understand. But we were friends. and I was pretty much her sole friend at work. Our acquaintance began when I noticed a Neanderthal maltreating her outside the break room. I believed in letting people live their lives. But this person went too far. When she saw me, she turned pale. She realizes she might be in trouble. I calmly stated, "You know, Miss Gillette, he shouldn't have pushed you like that. Are you okay?" She smiled. She whispered something to the guy. And as she passed me added, "Call me Butch. All of my buddies do." 3 days later, the individual was fired and never seen again. We were friends from then on. I believed I made a mistake when I unintentionally referred to her as Butch during a management meeting. You could have heard a pin drop. And I assumed my career was gone. But she did not flinch. She said, "Okay, Sundance. Everything is fine. If you had Butch as a friend, you'd have him for life. Damn Sundance. You look bad." Sundance had become my customary greeting following the incident. "What's happening?" "There have been reports around the office that you are involved in a lot of drama." "That is putting it mildly, Butch." I dropped into a chair emotionally exhausted. "I need to rest for a while. Can I crash with you and Becky?" "Of course, Jack. I'll have to check it with her. But I don't see any issues. We have lots of space. Can you tell me what's happening?" I explained the scenario, not omitting much. When I highlighted Franny's betrayal and my intention to terminate her, Butch lifted a hand to halt me. "You cannot fire her, Jack. You will subject us to a wrongful termination claim or worse. She claims you're retaliating for personal reasons unconnected to work. It is dangerous." "But Butch, she set me up and I have no recourse." "Relax, Jack. I got a better idea. Reach an agreement with Bill to transfer her. I need a new administrator." Butch gave me a wicked smile and raised her salary. "She will be unable to claim maltreatment." "You mentioned that she needs money." I couldn't help laughing. This was the first good news I had received, possibly indicating the beginning of my recovery. Butch had been here for 5 years and gone through 12. Number 13 Administrative Assistants. The first few attempted to file complaints and lawsuits, but none were successful, because Butch kept meticulous records and treated everyone fairly. Staff competition is fierce. She was known as the Angel of Ending because working for her meant being a dead man walking through their house. That evening I had to recount the entire story again. Becky listened sympathetically as Butch became angrier. I was grateful she was on my side. After finishing the story, I explained my conversation with Franny following Dakota's departure. "The calm girl will adore working for me, Jack," Butch stated with a chuckle. I chose to keep it short. Regarding Franny's comment about being a beta, "Is this a masculine trait?" I asked. Butch rolled her eyes. "Of course, you are a beta, Jack. Want to know what that means? A beta male is an amazing lover, because he cares about his partner's needs in bed. He's faithful, a great father, and can talk to his wife about more than just love making. He cares deeply about his family, does his laundry, cleans up after himself, is reliable, and isn't a control freak. He's not threatened by his wife's independence." Franny was complimenting you, not insulting you, she explained. "But what about Dakota's comment about the alpha gene?" I asked, still confused. Becky cut in, "You'll have to ask Dakota about that. For your peace of mind. You need to understand her motives." "What?" I asked, bewildered. Relax, Jack. Let me explain. Do you think Butch is alpha or beta? Becky asked. Definitely an alpha. I responded confidently. You're wrong. She's alpha at work but beta at home. Why do you think I've been with her all these years? At home, she's just like a beta. Becky explained. I was surprised. I looked at Butch. She smiled and nodded. That's right, Jack. I'm the alpha in our partnership. Butch lets me control our relationship. She's an alpha at work, which lets her be a beta at home. We all move between alpha and beta depending on the situation. Unless you're a sociopath, Becky said. Butch's eyes were wet with admiration for Becky. I remembered a similar look from Dakota. Maybe Dakota was right. She needed both of us to be whole. At that moment, Butch sat on Becky's lap and they started kissing passionately. I began to leave. Don't go, Jack. They said simultaneously, laughing. It's true, Jack. Becky runs the show here. Butch added, smiling. How do you feel about all this? I asked, trying to understand. After listening to you, I believe Dakota loves and needs me. But she lied to get what she wanted, turning my life into a lie. I'll never forgive her for that. I said, my voice steady with resolve. So what's next? What about your children? They love you and you love them. You can't just turn them off. Because of what their mother did. Butchie pointed out. I don't know. Butch. I just know Dakota and I are getting a divorce. Nothing will change my mind. I know it's petty. But I'm going to hurt Dakota and her lover. What do you think of Franny's role in this mess? I asked. In some ways, Franny's betrayal is worse. Dakota's actions were driven by her ideas about love and need. Franny's betrayal was calculating and unforgivable. Leave it to me, Butch said with finality. I nodded, knowing they understood. I'm going to bed. Thanks for letting me stay, I said, feeling a slight sense of relief. My phone buzzed all night with texts and calls from Dakota. I didn't read or respond to any of the more than 20 messages. The next day at the office, I arranged for Annie's transfer to Butch. She was set to start on Monday. May God have mercy on her soul. In the meantime, she was sent home with her salary. I continued staying with Butch and Becky for the rest of the week. They were really supportive and I felt grateful. I ignored all of Dakota's attempts to contact me and instructed security to keep her away from the office and parking lot. A few days later, Montana, Dakota's older sister, came up at my office. I had forgotten to notify her to security. Montana never liked me and the feeling was reciprocal. She always had a smug smirk, like she knew something I didn't. Now, without an administrative help, she stepped into my office unannounced with that same grin. Maybe today I could wipe it off her face. What do you need, Montana? I asked, trying to disguise my irritation. Can I at least come in and sit down, Jack? She asked, her voice bearing a note of arrogance. Sure, but don't get too comfortable. You won't be here long, I said, gesturing to a chair. Look, Jack. I understand we haven't been the best of friends. But please listen to me for a few minutes before I depart. Montana said, taking a seat. You know she loves you, Jack. And she'll go to any length to correct her mistake. Do you think she loves you? She continued. And I couldn't stop laughing. You know, Montana, I think she loves me. But it doesn't matter. I feel nothing but hate and disgust toward her. Anything else? I said. I'm really busy. You are an idiot, Jack. You've always been. I'm not sure what she saw in you. She snapped. Well, Montana, we do agree on something. I don't know what she saw in me either. I spoke with as much hate as I could muster. I did not come to argue, Jack. Because you won't speak to her. She wrote you this letter. She added, handing me a big white envelope addressed to my dear Jack in Cody's handwriting. I grumbled, stood up excitedly, and walked to the shredder. I grinned at Montana as I placed the unread letter in it. You're a dumb, childish boy, Jack. You are generating agony for yourself and your family. She snapped, striding toward the door. Montana, before you leave, could you tell me about Brockton Boseman? I asked. She froze and then slowly turned to me. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Surely your spouse Troy would be intrigued. I began. No, Jack, please. This has absolutely nothing to do with Troy. I was only trying to aid Dakota. She genuinely adores you. Tears streamed down her face. Is there actually nothing I can do? She inquired, her voice breaking. You have 1 week, Montana. If you don't tell Troy everything or try to hide the truth, he will obtain all of the proof I have. But since I am feeling benevolent, you have a week to persuade Troy to embrace your lifestyle. If he doesn't tell me directly, he doesn't care. He receives everything. I issued an ultimatum. Jack, please. I know you don't believe me, but I genuinely adore Troy. He means everything to me. She pleaded. Yes, I have heard this before. I responded coldly. Within 5 minutes, she changed from arrogant to pathetic. I even felt slightly bad. As bizarre as it may appear, Montana, I believe you. That's why I'm giving you 1 week. If I didn't believe you loved him, he'd get a large package at work tomorrow. Jack, no, please. Are your 2 boys his real children? She pleaded desperately. Montana, you do not comprehend. Things are not as you thought. Let me explain. She said. I had an answer. You have 1 week. Hello, Montana. When you depart, make sure to close the door. I said, starting to search through documents and not looking at her. I did not know Troy well, but he needed to know. The honest people discovered that Montana, a few years older than Dakota, lived a similar lifestyle. Perhaps Dakota got the notion from her, or from their mother. It did not matter. The door closed. I picked up the phone. Yes. And as I burnt them, I exclaimed, music in my ears, buddy. But Jackson, you have some difficult decisions to make. And said, none of this has been easy, honest. What happens next? I asked, realizing the gravity of the situation. An annulment is a win-win situation, given our proof and Franny's statement. It is straightforward. File your petition with the affidavit and serve it on her. I'll make sure the media knows. However, you will give up all visitation and custody rights for your children, the voice on the phone continued. There is no alimony or child support. It will be as if they never were in your life, unless, of course, the boys and she allow you to visit, which is unlikely after we've burned their bridges. Jackson, you can't leave me midway, the voice urged. Either see this through or file for divorce and depart significantly poorer. What are you going to pick, partner? He asked. Damn, things are just getting worse, I muttered, realizing the gravity of the situation. I need to think, I told him, claiming I needed time to comprehend things. Okay, Jackson, but I am ready to depart now. Let me know, he said, his voice calm and reassuring. I adored my girls and was angry at first when they referred to Du Bois as daddy, but then I understood they just knew they had two fathers who loved them, and it wasn't their fault. Who knows what Dakota told them? I wasn't sure what to do, so I discussed it with Butch and Becky that evening, but they had no responses. I was considering divorce for the girls' sake, but Dakota made my decision easier when she spoke to Montana. After work, I headed to the Horse's Head Bar and Grill for a drink. It was normally calm, and I needed to think, but my thoughts were disrupted. Hello, Jack. Dakota, we need to chat, Jack, a voice said, and before I could respond, she continued, but first, I'd like to show you something. Please come outside with me. She headed toward the door without waiting for a response. I followed, curious about what was going on. Outside in the bright late afternoon, she pointed to a Chevrolet SUV and asked, "Do you see them, Jack?" I looked around the parking lot and noticed a couple with Sheridan and Helena inside. The man had a sour expression but didn't look at me, while my girls looked at me sobbing. Du Bois started the engine and drove off. God, what has Dakota done? I mumbled, shocked by the scene. If you and I don't reach an agreement right now, Jack, this will be the last time you see your daughters, Dakota stated, her voice full of hate. If we split, either I will gain custody or you will get visitation rights, but I'll do everything I can to avoid it. I'm going to blame you for wrecking our family, and after I'm done, they won't want to see you again. Despite everything, I was astounded by her audacity, especially with Sheridan and Helena involved. What do you wish to know? I asked, trying to remain calm. I want us to be together again, Jack. I want my family back. You simply have to accept Byron in my life, she responded. Dakota, I'm trying to remain calm, but I know they're not my girls, I said, frustrated. Of course, they are, Jack. I love men and had no idea who my biological father was, but I knew you were the ideal man to parent children, she retorted. Dakota, you're still lying to me. I always know when you do, I said, pointing out her deceit. Because your lips twitch whenever you lie, I added. It took her a while to comprehend it. Jack, get away from me, you dumb, hateful cow, she snapped, turning on her heel and walking away. I went directly to my car and called Dennis. Go ahead and do the entire marriage, Dennis. I'll be with you till the end. Also, burn that piece of trash, I said, hanging up before he could respond. Dakota was clearly going to use the girls against me, regardless of what I chose. I had no choice but to terminate it. Perhaps in a few years, I'll be able to persuade Sheridan and Helena. I had no idea what would happen once Dakota was sued. I left Butch's apartment and went into a hotel, handling all administrative and financial aspects. Ennis planned to serve her with a temporary restraining order that would last a few weeks before a hearing to make it permanent for 3 years, with the expectation that she would breach the order by coming to my workplace and cursing, or better yet, striking me. He even stated that it would be okay if she hurt me, making the order a win-win situation. Sometimes I wondered which side he was on. All that remained was to hand her the documents and wait for the hearing. Dakota accomplished everything Ennis had hoped for. 2 days later, she ran past security, stormed into my office, and began throwing stuff while swearing. She slapped me multiple times before the guards apprehended her and called the cops. Ennis was disappointed she didn't harm me anymore, but she figured we could still make the order permanent. A divorce hearing was scheduled in 60 days, and all media outlets were informed of the date, location, and content. A lawyer attempted to close the session to the public, but the judge, up for re-election, denied the request. As was correct, an annulment was a win-win situation. He dragged out the hearing with unexpected drama, resulting in the annulment. He got a talk show, and the ratings for gossip columns increased. Troy, Montana's husband, paid me a visit 6 days after we spoke. I am just not as strong as you, Jack. I adore her and want to give her a chance. Our children have grown and left for college, but I still need them in my life. I am too old to start over, he said, his voice full of confusion. Couldn't you keep the evidence for yourself? He asked, his voice trembling with emotion. Perhaps I will need it later, I replied. You realize the kids aren't yours, right? Did she tell you? He nodded in agreement. Troy, is she still planning to sleep with her second husband? I inquired. He shook his head and looked down. I am Jack's father, regardless of who donated the seed fluid. I can't give them up, and she promises to give up this lifestyle if I stay with her. It's strange, but I believe she genuinely loves me. That is different, I said, understanding Troy's position. I simply can't leave it, I added, shaking his hand and watching him leave. I didn't see him or Montana again. They relocated out of state when their children graduated from high school. As for Mrs. Byron Du Bois, she received a bulky parcel from FedEx. Things proceeded rapidly for Mr. Du Bois. Maybe I made a mistake, since a few months after the court ordered Du Bois to provide my child support, he was broke and nearly died when he discovered that he would only receive 40% of a $250 every month, and it stated enraged. He was so irritated that he renounced his 5% discount guarantee when I asked how much money he made from his talk program. He calmed down, realizing the reality of his situation. About 6 months after the annulment, I contacted Dakota and asked if we could meet to chat. Everyone said I needed closure, and I had questions. We met around the horse's head. Are you serious? She asked, her voice shrill and angry. After what you did to Byron and me, you will never see my girls again if you just whisper to them. I'll ban you so quickly your head will spin. You're a little delusional about what I did to you, I replied, taking a deep breath, knowing a yelling match was not an option. What if I lift the restraining order and agree to cover the girls' college expenses? I knew you and Byron will make it. As you mentioned, they are not too responsible for anything. I want them to have the possibility to attend a reputable college. I noticed she was softening. I'm not sure, Jack, she said, her tone hesitating. Dakota, I'll even babysit if you decide to go away for the weekend. I know they're at an age where they don't need it, but I simply want to continue in their life to show them that I still love them and perhaps explain why I acted the way I did. I promise not to speak ill of you. I simply state that you desired a new lifestyle and we both decided it was best to part ways. Let me think about it, she responded, her tone returning to practically normal. Dakota, may I ask you some questions? It's probably not a big deal, but it worries me, and I want answers. Please say the truth, it will not undo anything, I persisted, looking for some clarity. Whatever, Jack, she murmured, growing agitated. Her attitude irritated me, but I didn't expect much from her. Why did you really ruin my life and for what? I asked. She gave an irritated sigh. You did it to yourself, Jack, she remarked, sensing I was about to erupt. She proceeded by raising both hands. I understand, I understand. My acts distanced us, but you used scorched earth on me. I had no choice. Utah removed my soul and fed it to the wild dogs. What were you expecting from me? She continued, her voice filled with a mix of frustration and regret. I expected us to discuss it like grown-ups and sort it out, I replied, trying to reason with her. You know Troy and Montana are still together, right? People speak, Jack. They fix their own difficulties, I added, attempting to show her that relationships could be mended. Dakota, to be fair, informed him that she would leave her lover, not that I trusted her to make their marriage regular, I said, seeing the inequity and pointing out the inconsistencies in her actions. You said I needed to accept Byron's presence in your life, I added, highlighting the unfairness of the situation. This was obviously hurting her, and she switched strategies. I did not intend to hurt you, Jack. You have to acknowledge that until you met Byron and me, you felt you had a great life. I helped you discover this existence. I genuinely loved you, and my heart broke when you left me, she added, hoping to tap into my nostalgia. That presents a major question: why did you need both of us? I inquired, searching for the truth. I'm not sure, Jack, she replied, taking a deep, deliberate breath. My sister did it, as did some of my pals. You may not realize it, but this lifestyle is growing increasingly mainstream, she said, trying to justify her actions. I snorted mockingly. Then why not talk about it with me before we got married? Did you honestly make love with Du Bois on our wedding day? First, who told you this? It is a complete lie. I would never do that, she continued, her face incredulous. Second, if I told you, would you have agreed to the wedding? No, you would not, I pressed, highlighting the absurdity of the situation. And I really loved you, but sometimes I just wanted. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed what you did in bed, but you didn't have the courage to take me without fear of hurting me, she said, her voice filled with earnestness, if not delusion. It was evident that I would not receive a satisfactory response, so I moved on. What could she say to make sense? Why did you have to make love with him in my bed? I pressed on, seeking answers. I know you won't believe me, but this was the first and only time we did this in our home, let alone on a bed, she said, raising my eyebrows in disbelief, but somehow, I believed her. So why? I asked. She sighed again, this time with grief as she sought closure. Iron's ridiculous alpha. Inclinations, he only needed to push, and in a moment of weakness, I gave in. Stupid, 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 she exclaimed, almost in tears. God, Jack, perhaps you will leave it alone. You are an excellent spouse, father, and lover, so why have children? Don't tell me it wasn't intended, I inquired, eager for answers. She gave a remorseful expression before answering, Jack, you are essentially an anonymous middle manager in a medium-sized company. For goodness sake, you drive a minivan. Your idea of fun is to sit at home in your horrible man cave and watch sports on television. Byron's notion of fun is to charter an aircraft to the game or go to Vegas for the weekend. Byron drives Corvettes and currently, or formerly, owned a thriving business. This lifestyle is exhilarating but not sustainable, she stated, attempting to defend her decisions. Yes, but you're with him and not me, I pointed out, doubting her delight. I'm afraid it will not last long, I inquired, sensing the instability of her situation. Living with that pompous idiot full-time is very different from having him around part-time. Besides, he is a lousy father, she admitted, revealing flaws in her decision. Just as I expected. I do not feel sorry for you either, Dakota. What a bad predicament you made your bed, I replied, feeling vindicated. Listen, Jack, I know I screwed up big time with that little incident at the pub with the females. It was dumb of me. I understand, but I was desperate and figured I had nothing to lose. God, I wish I could undo this if not everything else, she confessed, her voice full of sadness. She remained silent for a moment, and I didn't feel any better after this talk. So much for the ending. I started getting up and leaving. Jack, please wait, she grabbed my hand. I still love you and I always will. I want you to know that if you come back to me, everything will be okay. I vow I will never see Byron again and will spend the rest of my life making amends to you, she pleaded, her voice laced with both optimism and anguish. I removed my hand, stood up, and gazed down at her. Sorry, Dakota, it is too late for that. Thank you for meeting with me. Consider what I stated regarding the girls. Goodbye, Dakota. I did not look back. Dakota never responded to my proposal for the girls. Hell, I had no idea if she was still with the boy or living on the streets. I didn't care. However, ignorance about Helena and Sheridan persisted. Not me, sometimes they drive me crazy, they were innocent pawns in this story. Did I do the correct thing? I was sitting in my favorite neighborhood dive bar, Emilio's. I was already sipping my second Jack and soda when Emilio placed another one in front of me and shook his head in frustration. Almost 2 years after the annulment, I was still feeling sorry for myself. If I hadn't tipped well, he would have kicked me out a long time ago. Every evening when I arrived, he greeted me the same way. Amazing, here comes Mr. Sunshine. Please do not suck the life out of my place again today, okay, Jack? Apparently, he thought I wasn't the life of the party. The lady at the end of the bar has paid for the drinks. He jerked his head left. Will you go cry on her shoulder and make a fool of yourself? She'll flee like everyone else, and it'll cost me money, idiot. He walked away while muttering to himself. I assumed Emilio had replaced Denise as my best friend. I looked back and noticed Franny approaching, which was surprising. I stood frozen, staring at her. I had only seen Franny in the company building a few times. I tried not to notice her, but one day she confronted me near the break room. I am not leaving, Jack. This cow can fire me if she wants, but I won't give her a reason. I will not give you that pleasure, and then she left. I went straight to Bush's office, beside myself with rage. Why is the cow still here? Calm down, Sundance, I treat her like any other administrative assistant I've had. She's the best I've seen. She accepts everything I do to her. If she fails, but Franny will stay as long as she delivers. And there she stood before me, still an administrative employee of Bush. It was a record. Her resilience finally liquidated my hatred for her. I simply saw her as an invisible part of a past life. Hello, Jack, how are you? When I didn't answer, she continued, do you think we could talk? I paused for a long time. Maybe it's time, I said. Yes, Franny, I think we can. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.